in all my journeys, I think the critical turning point or the path has been when I met Sir, and consciously or unconsciously, that has made all the difference, to quote Robert Frost. So, here, by presenting my learnings, I hope that I can reinforce learning and attention on some of the spokes of one of the wheels of the engine of the entity, which I have understood from my vantage point, and I present to you my map of the territory.
Absolutely clear.
Thanks. So I thought I would first talk about what was my internalized learnings. And that's where a narrative starts. So there was a long time ago, I think as we talked before, I had met Sir. Then we had to go different ways when he moved across to Coimbatore. So I was lucky to meet him a few times. And there were also scenarios where I tried to be with him for a long time. And there was a burning desire that I could spend a long time, maybe a few weeks, months, years with him, maybe as an individual entity or part of a group, to pick up from where I had left off. And it was an understanding that maybe I had just seen a small glimpse, like a Balarama, not the entire Krishna, and to understand and learn about things. So there were snippets, gems which had been scattered at various points of the journey. And I knew they were there, but I could not connect the dots or go and understand which is a diamond, which is a ruby, which has to be polished, which has to be taken as it is. And then with the current scenario, with the COVID, one of the things what happened was this fellowship was born, and I was invited into it, firstly with a tryst with a woodcutter. And the last 9 months have passed like the blink of an eye. And when I tried to capture that, it also incidentally spanned out into 9 pages. And from the first swing of the axe till now, many things have been learned. Now, as Sir has given an assurance, many of these have been internalized. And even though they may be dissipated from my consciousness, the assurance and the belief and the conviction is that it will get triggered when the critical turning point or the necessity comes up. To write down or to summarize on everything I have learned, I went back to my conscious memory at first, and then as events, as learnings popped up, put them through. And then after that, I consulted my notes and also some of the sessions which Ashwati was kind enough to record for us, and try to put in the areas which were of key learning for me or which struck a chord with me. So the most reinforced and discussed points for me, which struck out or which stay, are the referent reality perspective and controlling the mind and its thoughts. So a few things which has always been talked about. One is
Just a Tintin. The spelling of reinforced is REIN. Okay.
okay, sir.
If you use it as normal concept of reinforce, but the structuring of your spelling, it can also mean reinforce. That's okay. In which case there should be a hyphen between E and a normal reinforcement, like reinforced concrete. This is the spelling. I mean, if you are meaning strengthening, the spelling is REINFORCED. This is also okay. This is beautiful that this is your concept. That is reinforced. That's also okay. All right. Okay.
So
Okay. Proceed.
Thank you, sir. We started off with a humble pen, and the humble pen became a crux from which the consciousness and the logic expanded. So, sir always said, go back to a simple concept to understand something in its entity, and then build it up into more complex areas. So the pen or the object, a pen was the first item which we picked up, I think, about even 15, 20 years back. So from there, we talked about referent reality, the referent reality, and also its projections, and many other aspects of it.
Wait, why don't you interpret little more, Tintin?
Yes,
Because
sir.
you have made a, recollection of a very critical point, that is, uh, always begin with the simple reality. Even the greatest things, whatsoever be the greatest, they're all built up with the small items. So attention on the small is the most required thing, which you have pointed out. Even in your official problems or existential problems or internal problems, I mean psychological issues of managing the mind, begin with the small point. Everyone is trying to grapple the whole. That's the problem of the world, of the mediocrity majority, and the campaigns are all about grasping the whole, becoming number one in the world, becoming richer, becoming famous. All these are continuously what you call campaigned in the environment. But focusing on the symbol, focusing on a single unit is the crux of all these things that they do not talk about it. So human beings should focus on the symbol, singular unit to begin with. Those who are in different location with a different size, they can begin like that. So any issues if you want to manage in your office, in your work, in your relationships, in managing the mind, you begin with the symbol. That you have to always remember. Otherwise, you may forget. Begin with the symbol. That is, see, even in the look at the world. The great majority of people are trying to grab the big Parashakti, big God, big Almighty power. They are not able to focus on the little uh, flame of lamp in their own puja room, which they light very ceremoniously every evening. That is the beginning. That is the beginning. They do not really respect and love their mother, father, brother, sister, daughter, etc. And that little thing, or they do not have the ability to focus attention on the plants and the trees and the birds and the air and the sky around. Disregarding all these things with no experience on the cycle, they want to get onto the race bike and the racetrack. See? If you want to get onto the racetrack, you have to begin your balancing on the bicycle, then on the bike, and then, like Aisha Miracle pointed out, that the transition should be allowed, and the duration of transition and the aspects of transition, the items of transition will depend upon the kind of transformation you want. So, nice that you have pointed out that aspect, Tintin. Once again, will you go back to that point?
Yes,
Because
sir.
that's a critical point. What, yeah, quoting that pen, you made a statement. What is that? That statement is not there, but you said that.
Yes, sir. Always start with the basic or the smallest thing to try to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. The basic and the smallest. And actually, it is not basic and the smallest. Smallest is the basic. Because basic and the smallest, again, there may be confusion whether the small which you have identified, whether it is basic or not. Okay. And when you go with one small, if it doesn't work or after it's working, go to the next small. Of course, Tintin has a point. There are some smalls are basics, like the pillar of a building is basic, no doubt. So that is that all kind of directions of angles of the cameras of the scene which you are trying to shoot. You decide, of course. There are no rules. Okay, Tintin, go to the slide where you wanted to go. All right.
Yes, sir. So we were talking, one of the learnings was about the referent reality and the referent reality projections. So referent is anything which is referred to by words, and we can understand from there that every referent has an independent existence and everything in the world is a referent. So this was one of the building blocks for us from where we started. We understood
Wait, wait,
entities.
wait. Wait. Do not go in a normal, what you call, flow of ideas. You are presenting your learnings, therefore it is easy. Referent is what exists, what we try to give a meaning to, or to try describing in words. Tintin. So, why Tintin there?
That was my understanding
Of
of
course,
it.
beautiful. Have that confidence. Forget about, of course, do not quote somebody's printed words or very well known words, but have the confidence and trust to restructure, recreate, reinvent, reform your own personalized angles of observation. Then you become a greater director of the film of your existence. Beautiful. All right.
Thank you,
Oh,
sir.
oh.
We also understood that if we take any small component, it can anything can be broken down into ideas, concepts, etc. And then a referent reality is what we took as the next concept. Now, again, coming back to pen as a simple entity, we looked at a pen which was taken, and there were a couple of pens if we considered, and each pen took it out from a shop, and if it is given to two different individuals who bought them, from there the story of each pen flows in a different direction. If you take Nitya's pen,
Yeah,
for
wait.
instance,
Try to get into. I mean, that you have to develop. You have to get into a little bit of picturesque speaking. The same way is every pen. I mean, the human being in the womb of every woman, more or less identical duplication of the human design is happening. Like from the womb of a plastic injection molding machine, the pen are appearing. Various kinds of pens are appearing, but they are all fundamentally pens. But as you very correctly point out, in that path of existence, every pen meets its destiny. Some pen gets just thrown away into dustbin. Some pens are used very carelessly. Some pens are used just like anybody ordinary would do. Some pens are treated with respect and love and wonder uh, and all that. Then some pens are used to write ordinary things. Some pens are used to write poetry and all that. Same. Do you see the parallel existence in its invariantness? Of course, we are all today. We have not. We have just started variant, invariant. The invariant is more or less the same with all existential entities and things and phenomena. I am waiting for the day when you discover that. One day I want every one of you, or I hope, or I believe, every one of you will discover the invariant of every variance in the world. Starting with the man created variant of the pen or the safety pin or the pencil or the rocket or the automobile or the whatever. Then the plants and the birds and the you and the invariant in the you too. And become supremely powerful and supremely justified for having this beautiful engine of your body. All right, Tintin.
thank you, sir. From there, we understood on the various possibilities and expanded on to the concept of projecting and to explore the various possibilities. I later understood this was also a methodology which could be used to drive your intent and use the will to get there. We've seen it demonstrated in a certain manner in last week's session by Rameshi, how he pointed out in a very detailed manner as to the ways in which he tries to prepare, project the will, and how to take it through. The other subconcept, what we had talked about, was with respect to referent perception and conceptual a reference as part of this. So that was with respect to referent reality. And even the start of a pen was just the tip of the iceberg. And this was the first learning which was reinforced. So from a simple pen, when we looked at it, we could understand where it could go as to how many possibilities it could have. And from their project as to the potentialities of it, what it can be used for. Wielded, a pen is mightier than the sword, said the poet. So that is like the, I think, the ultimate level to which you can achieve things with maybe a simple single pen. So that was one of the learnings and insights from the referent reality perspective, its projection, and using a simple entity of a pen. This brought us to the next learning, which was in terms of language. How language has been used or has been evolved for human beings. Now, emotions, habits, everything has been tried to be brought across into language. Language evolved sometimes as pictograms. Language evolved from hieroglyphics to basic vowel structures into a detailed syntax. And each language was also used by people to form art, to create emotive interpretations, and even to create war at different scenarios. So language has been something which we understood or learned is very critical. And from a very basic scenario to build going into complex part of language, and then bringing it down into the simplest possible way so that it can resonate, it can connect with any and everybody. So that was a for me. From trying to struggle with the basic concept of a language, let's take English, and then reading through various kinds of articles, writing, trying to get into bombastic statements, then trying to bring it down to a simple level of keeping the very basic communication through, which could be understood by anybody and everybody, was a concept which we discussed. Then the next thought which came to my mind and on which I've then delved deep into was the body. So, Sir had harped on this many a time when we had discussed about how the body has to be taken care, how the body is something which has to be understood, which is the least understood, one of the most taken for granted aspects, and how from a very basic entity, an amoeba, to a known earthworm, to a human being, supposedly the one of the most evolved of the species, the alimentary canal, the digestive process is what triggers it. And from there, we extrapolate down to the other processes of the body, and then all the other triggers, the chemical triggers, and everything which drives it. So this is detailed out in the sessions below as well. Then we went on to mind. So this is something which I talked about or thought about as well. Everybody thinks about the mind. Sir has talked about the Mindberg to give a concept as to how big it is, how deep it is, how less understood or less seen it is, the potentialities of it, and how what level or what depth can be achieved with it. Coming back to the mind, another thought which struck me was we talk about the gut feeling. So I think this was like a very direct referent or a correlation to how the mind is connected to the body, or even what we talk about as to the trigger of the alimentary canal. So that was something which was understood, which came as a, I would say, a saying where people could maybe describe it in a way a human being or a normal person could understand. The next concept which stuck in my mind was about Jnana Yoga. So in India, I think intuitively we talk about yoga and we are talking about the various types of yoga. There are even explorations about making it new age, things like power yoga, even deer yoga as some of the newfangled ideas. But the concept of Jnana Yoga or Jnana Yoga as a potential way to achieve enlightenment or satori was something which resonated. This is a concept which I think is can be understood if you look at it taking a step back. For this to be understood, we have to go back to the body as well. But the key concept is that by introducing new thoughts, higher order thoughts, beautiful thoughts, creative thoughts, and by bombarding the neural network, we are making connections, reinforcing existing connections, forming overlays above each layer, and by thereby creating layers and layers of connections, expanding the mind, expanding the consciousness, and thereby trying to get into a glimpse of satori. Now, coming across to the next concept or the glimpse of satori, Sir brought across a beautiful analogy of there is a horse race, and maybe there are people who are inclusive who are inside, and then there is a small boy who's trying to get a glimpse of the race. There is a prize horse, maybe it's a dark horse or it's a beautiful horse, but he wants to see it and he wants to experience it. So you find a small keyhole which is there in the wall, and you're going across to the wall and trying to peer through the keyhole. And through that hole, what you can see would be the holes which is passing through at that moment. You're not having a expanded tree view or a world view from where you can see the world. You zoom into the what do you call it? The turf. And the turf, there are lanes. In the lanes, there are horses. Then you come, you look at that horse, you track it through to the start of the journey. It's comparison. No. From this keyhole, you keep viewing through. And at a correct moment, if you're lucky, if you're destined, if that intent is there, the will is there, the persistence is there, the timing is right, is when we glimpse this horse called the Satori.
Not if you are lucky. Every one of you is lucky. The concept of luck. What is the referent of luck? What is the concept sense about luck? How did you come across the word luck? How did you get the image or the idea or the mental impression about what is luck? Most of the time, it is about getting something unusual, getting some favorable or hoped for things and all that. Lucky draw, you know. Of course, that's a peripheral tip of the iceberg. But what we are talking about is an attunement. You're tuning your Tao with the forces of existence that are actually every moment engaged with you. That is the higher dimension of luck. That higher dimension of luck, I know that every one of you is already tuned. But that luck should not be questioned by your existent concepts of luck. You have to clearly understand that every one of you is highly educated, highly informed about all kinds of concepts and ideologies in the world, including the concept of luck. So it is easy to be misunderstood. That's why we are all concerned about referent or the concept sense of every word, the referent of every word, and the referent reality of every word. We have actually not yet completed the concept of referent and referent reality perspective. All of you now know, if you are aware, you really apply that referent perspective at least most of the time? Not most of the time,
But
at least when it is required. How many of you do that? Okay, wonderful.
I try to.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
do it. And do it for some time. And as I told you, if you want, you can write a concept sense and referent description for some time in your project work with the purpose that that should become your automatic engine. Because the entire universe is nothing but a huge assemblage of real things. That means the reference. And all these references have been investigated, studied, and analyzed. And whatever is studied, analyzed, and understood, they have become the subject matters of what you call physics and chemistry and biology and management and biotechnology and rocket science and all those things are there. But a referent of existential concern, referent of individual situations in our operating environment, the referent of, uh, let us say, an automobile engine or a particle bombardment or a design, you might be aware. All right, that's why you're all masters and they're all highly qualified. That is important, no doubt about that. But what is required in our normal existence is, as soon as someone comes to you, you have to see the referent of that person coming to you, then the descriptions of that person controlling your perception of the person coming to you. And in every sentence of that person, you have to see the referent of what he, she is or he is talking about. Because the reality is about the referent. You can never see the reality in the explained words. Words are constant, as we said. The word pen, P and pen, so long as English language exists, remain constant, invariant. But the varying aspect is the real pen. Every pen is different from the other pen. Every human being is different from the other human being. Every report made by every human being is different from similar report made by a similar person. So have that referent. And it has immense practical applications, like in your work situation. And work situation is very important. In normal concepts about enlightenment and all these things, they do not give much importance to work. I really hope every one of you do wonders in your work. It may not be that easily possible because every available level of work is already a wonder. So, but whenever there is possible, the intent is not necessarily to create a wonder or an impression about you by the other people. The requirement is see the totality. So the total orbits of the realities of every critical referent that you are concerned about. Whether it could be a marvelous large project or a minute aspect of the project, a minute aspect of the design, a minute aspect of a concept in your PowerPoint presentation, whatsoever it is. All right, Tintin, continue.
Thank you, sir. The next couple of points which my mind jumped to at that time was
No,
on,
wait, Tintin, you were talking about glimpse. Go back. Yeah,
yes, sir.
glimpse. Yeah. Would you like to say something more about glimpse on your own? What is the referent of glimpse? What did you understand by glimpse? Talk your understanding once again.
Yes, sir. By a glimpse of the Satori, what I meant was what you can get at that moment is the Satori passing in the front of that keyhole, and it's for that millisecond, and that is the experience you've been looking for, and you imbibe it.
All right. All right. Glimpse of, uh, do not restrict it to the context of Satori if you are restricting it to the Satori of the master woodcutter. That is an ultimate orbit of Satori. But there can be glimpses of Satori in whatever you do. That means the truth of whatever you do, the core of whatever you do, the core of that invariant, variant structure of whatever you do. That also you will get as a glimpse only if you reflect upon that for further evolution, for further development. So because truths are most of the time subtle and hidden. The truth of an automobile engine, of course, whatever you see outside, that is one. You open the bonnet and you see the what you call the cylinder head, the air inlet, battery, and all those things. That is the peripheral level of truth, no doubt about that, which everyone can see. But the truth is that wonder of that fire. Look at that speed, for example, the RPM, rotation per minute. A normal engine at in the idling condition, that when just started, it's close to 2000 to 3000 rotations per minute. That means about 50, whatever. So look at the speed of movement of the pistons. Look at the speed of fire. Look at the speed of that gas mixture, that petrol air mixture getting fire. See that fire, that what you call um, combustion. That is called the combustion stroke. That petroleum mixture is is exploding. The piston moves down. It's all split second speed, and in that speed, the fire element is ready to operate. That is why automobile engines are possible. So, similarly, there is the fire, that split second fire, on of fire is going on in every neuron of you. That is the truth of the you. Whatever is manifested outside, your expressions, your responses, your behaviors, your actions, your ways of relating with other people, and your languages are all externally manifested engines and gearbox and steering and to see it and work and details of that vehicle of the you and the way you drive the vehicle. Okay. So truth can have only glimpses because the truth is at such a subtle, deeper level. You can almost never see the engine firing. I don't know whether there could be a certain time when there will be what you call transparent glass engines. Even let us say the glass cylinder and engine. But even then, you will not see individual fire. The speed of fire is such that you will see continuous light only. An individual spark may not be able to. It may not be accessible to identify. So glimpse can go to that level. You will notice even a single spark in a high speed continuity of light. So in the speed of continuity of our existence, you have to slow down once in a while. And in your evening moments of prayers or even your moments of meditation, you have to reduce the speed. In that ongoing continuity, you have to look at that single brick of fire to see the building of your ongoing reality. So glimpse, I wondered at that word glimpse being separately pointed out by Tintin. So the concept of glimpse, the referent of glimpse, the referent reality of glimpse is very important. Have a glimpse. So understand the process of glimpse. For example, a murder happens, the entire crime branch is investigating for days and months together. They don't get a clue. And the so-called CV comes, they also go to the scene of crime and they get the clue. That clue is a glimpse. I mean, that clue begins with a glimpse. So that the referent of glimpse, the process of glimpse is something very important. Very, very important. I had told you sometime back, even in your normal every day, you pass through that moment of glimpse, at least an average uh, uh, 5, 6, 9 times. But the truth is available only in the form of glimpse. I mean, the core truth. Whatever you see outside, that's also truth. I mean, the vehicle, the full vehicle also is a truth. Opening the bonnet again, you see a truth. Opening the engine again, you see a truth. But they are all possible only if the engine is stopped and dismantled. Then it is easy to see, identify the origins and the locations of the truth of an automobile engine. But we cannot do that with the live being which you is. That's the only difference. You have to see that spark. You have to have a glimpse of that spark inside you when you, the automobile engine, is working. That's the only difference. All right. So, how the concept of glimpse. And like have a glimpse. I told you when you reach home from the office, have a glimpse of your wife. Have a look at her from the corner of your eyes. Of course, you see her, but have a look also. Or when you see your own reflection in the mirror, have a look, have a special look, a moment of looking, because your image in the mirror is the most familiar image. But have a look. In one of your looks, you may get a glimpse. Yeah, that's all I said. That glimpse, that's all. What you see in that glimpse is what you will see in that glimpse. Of course, Tintin. Proceed.
Okay, sir. The next concept or idea which we had discussed through is clubbed on a couple of things. The first is about mystics, and second is about karma yogi. So, elevated pedestal was where we generally, or I kept mystic. It is like an unknown person, an entity who resides maybe at the top of a hill, the seer at the top of a hill. But by looking at and understanding the parables of the master woodcutter, master cook, and also the master thief, they are people or they are entities who have transcended or have worked, maybe doing ordinary things, and have taken that to transcend to a different level. So, a pursuit of enlightenment was not their full time goal. They have achieved it or have been able to get a glimpse of that feeling or that state by undergoing or taking their responsibilities or doing what they are generally doing or which they've been doing to a degree of perfection.
Exactly, exactly. That's also a very critical thing. Greatness is not about doing the so called advertised great things. So called wonder can be achieved in the daily, ordinary things, so called ordinary things that you do. Look at wood cutting, cutting wood. Now, nobody does that here. Okay. Of course, cutting wood requires a little bit of a mastery that most people would achieve it in 2, 3, 4, 5 months. But wood cutting is considered to be an ordinary activity. Nobody bothers about a woodcutter. Nobody respects a woodcutter. Nobody would even look at a woodcutter. Okay. So ordinary things. That is what we talked about Shanoyu. The possibility of that, what Tintin mentioned, that glimpse of the truth, of the spark, uh, of the continuity of the cooking is possible. Even with, okay, the cooking a cup of tea. Then what about doing or working in the office? You get what you call forgotten into that doing. Keep your awareness apart. Train yourself. See, Ramesh last time talked about seeing himself lying down, and he was able to direct his attention to a remote location, and from that location he could see him. Wonderful. You can do that in your day-to-day work in the very office also. So that is why work is worship. That is why karma yoga. Whatever you do in the office, that is your karma. Whatever you do in the kitchen, that is your karma. Look at it as your karma. Look at it as your expression of that entity. Its hands moving, its mind is working, its attention is focused upon what is being done. That's what happens even when you fly a fighter jet. That's what will happen when you drive what you call a race car 350 kilometers per hour. Like Narayan Karthikeyan told me that at 300 kilometers per hour I am driving myself. In fact, every minute you are driving yourself only. But of course, at that time you will be much more aware about the driving of yourself. That's all. But nevertheless, even in your day-to-day ordinary doing of cooking a cup of tea involves the driving of self, but it has happened more or less automatic, very simple. There are no complexities in cooking a cup of tea. Therefore, you don't feel the gravity of that. Again, our mindsets are divided. Cooking a cup or doing kitchen work is something silly, and doing what you call corporate planning in the what you call in the big corporate office in a big city with whatever is great. No, doing the work as a prime minister of India is great. Okay, it is great, but the work of a woodcutter, the work of a farmer in the field also is equally great. It is all perceptions of the mind that divides the so-called something as so-called big and the small. Anyway, let the world do it. That these things, the world, I mean, the majority, the normal distribution will never understand. I am telling you, even in 4000 AD, people will not understand this. But we are talking about you, the few people who are ready to climb the Everest of you. Do you think ever in the world, even let's say, a significant percent of people will be interested in climbing Everest? No, not at all. All right, Tintin.
Thank you, sir. Coming on to carrying on to the concept of Karma Yogi, this was a concept which we casually discussed when I was once at Kalimangalam. And sir said, Rangan is my guru. And I was mystified. In what context, in what way? And sir was talking about how he is steadfast in his work. He, rain or shine, even if there is anything which is happening, a celebration, a festival, or a death, or any other occasion, he gets up in the morning, he does his work, he comes back, and he goes through the routine as if nothing else has changed. The sun rises, Rangan rises. Sun sets, Rangan goes to sleep, but he wakes up again at times to watch over the fields when elephants come. He was as comfortable sleeping on the ground as he was, I'm sure, sleeping on a bed. And many a time, Sir said he has been sleeping even on the veranda so that he could get a semblance of maybe shelter while still watching over the his crops. I once offered him a cream bun. He took it. He enjoyed it. The next time when I came, I didn't think there was any expectation. I asked him, "Do you want one?" Then he recollected, yes, please, thank you. He took it, he enjoyed it. But there is no level of anticipation, no level of expectation. And he just took it, he enjoyed it. Maybe he had shared it, I don't know. But the fact is that that was a level of stoicism in his work. And if you think about all the manual work which is being done, like Sir talked about cutting wood with an axe. As a kid, I used to follow the workers around. I had a small, what you call a mammati, which is used to uh, actually rake the soil, or how I don't know how exactly you would describe it in English, and the small baby axe as well. So to wield it, you need to have a certain skill set. There has to be a certain timing. It has to be sharpened enough. You strike it in such an angle so that the wood gets cut, the splinters don't come to your eye, and you also make sure that when the tree falls, it doesn't fall on you or somebody else standing by or any other. adjacent buildings or any other structures. So there is a method to it. You develop calluses. Before that, there are blisters. And I think with a saw coming in and then a chainsaw, an electric saw, everything else, a motorized saw, all that got taken for granted. Now, understanding the seasons, planting the, what do you call it, the small seeds, making sure they grow up, de-weeding, call it, making sure the soil is tilled so that there is aeration, making use of whatever climate, the rains, then harvesting it, selling it, then trying to get earning out of it. It's not a simple thing. But when we pick it up from a supermarket, it's just maybe a transaction. But all that goes behind it, the referent, the realities of it, is something which I think is much more tougher than sitting in an office and working, because there are so many assurances there. So this was a
Of
learning
course.
and an observation.
Of course, Tintin, that's beautiful of you to notice that and point out. We simply go to a shop and buy those vegetables, and it has become a habit. And as enlightened, as evolved entities of attention, I would say every time you pick up a piece of vegetable, you must be grateful. You must see the work of a so-called farmer. Most of the time, very diligent and very dedicated and very sincere, like Tintin mentioned. Tintin would feel the referent of it because he directly observed it and doing it. Everybody may not have that opportunity, but it is not necessary. But you must practice your sensitivities to see that invisible, uh, silent sounds of the forest of human existence. This way you feel wonderful about existence. And do not wait for the campaigns to feel wonderful about existence. Having a Ferrari or Mercedes Benz or bank accounts or big buildings or big, big dresses and all are nothing. Those who have it, you go and ask them. Only the observers feel that they are comfortable. No. You don't have to wait for that time to find that they are all meaningless. You ask any rich person, I have asked at least 20 plus super rich people, not as rich as Ambani's and all that, but super rich, 1,000 crore, 1,500 crore turnover kind of companies. They all say we just continue because that business is there, people are working. But we understand the meaninglessness of money. Nothing. Our relationships are zero. I don't have any feeling of the love of my wife. My children definitely do not need me. No, it is absolutely callous emptiness I experience. But I manage every day morning. I have no time to feel that. So I just go to the office, take care of production, take care of inventories and managing people. So the beauty is in your focus. All right. And as I said, whether you enjoy the beauty of focus or not, but you must be sensitive to what Tintin mentioned, because the creature, your creature, that human entity of planet Earth survives, of course, by so-called food. That must never be underestimated. Of course, whether you care it or not, food is available. You have the money to buy the food, but do not take it for granted. Definitely, your entire life, I'm sure you will not have paucity or poverty of food. But that is not a reason to disregard the wonder about every piece of rice that goes into your body, every piece of tomato or whatever that goes into your creature. Your consciousness, your attention, yourself should go. And you should train it to go. I'm not telling that you think about this every time you pick up every single tomato from the vegetable market. No. But train yourself for some time. Then you leave it. Like every day, you don't have to be on the bicycle. You have trained yourself to be on the bicycle. Now you are comfortable. Similarly, train the bicycle of your sensitivity to understand your linkage with the creature and your linkage with those wonderful human beings working in the hard sun and the hard rain and hard climates, taking care of their crops. Mind you, every work can be taken for granted and one can be careless about it. From a single messenger boy to the prime minister or president of a country, they can be careless about their work. But a farmer is not. The consciousness can be careless about everything. But every cell of your body is absolutely, firmly, correctly, completely, elegantly doing its function. Your heart, your liver, every cell of your body, like the nature process out there in the farmlands by which the tomato is born. Of course, the farmers do not create the tomato. The nature process creates the tomato. All right, Tintin, thanks to talk about Rangan. Bye. Proceed.
Thank you, sir. The next concept which we were made aware about was the speed trap. Now, this is something which is very innately, I think, understood by everybody because it's like the fastest car, the fastest turnaround time in which you can finish a job, the fastest pace in which a company can grow. The It's always about higher, greater, faster. So I've always thought about
And
who.
fastest internet connection, fastest mobile also. Okay.
Yes, yes, sir. So sometimes you do look at it. Stepping back, there was a time when I wanted to buy a new RAM for my computer when I was a student. So my friend's brother, he came visiting. He looked at it and said, "Your operating potential of this computer, all the programs you're running, is currently within the state of what you have, which itself is quite good. Why do you want to put a new one?" So my intention was, yeah, I still wanted to buy one, but now there is a logical reason for me to buy one. So there was a paradoxical situation there. Similarly, I think what is being happening is this is the way sometimes companies are also stretching themselves to what you call, at least in mechanical or civil engineering, the stretching point. You go to a level, the body becomes elastic, then you get to what you call the yield point or the point of failure, and then it gets broken.
And by the way, Tintin, corporates all over the world, they're all victims of the speed trap. I think within another 10, 15 years, the world will come to an economic uh, uh, collapse. Because in order to speed up the processes of manufacturing, they are all resorting to robots, uh, basically, and all the items are produced in large numbers, and employment is becoming much less every year, and the government is trying to do all kinds of things. And the government of India is providing all kinds of financial benefits, microfinancing schemes, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, this Yojana, that Yojana, and they are trying very hard to create so many startups and so many micro, small, medium enterprises. And I am sure 90% of them are not going to succeed. And there will come a stage, there will not be any buyers for the robot produced equipments and machines and cars and so on and so forth. If the number of employees are reduced by robots and the production process fastened up, who is there to buy? Who will have money to buy these things? There will come a standstill, there will be a bottleneck. A lot of calamities are going to happen in the coming 10, 15 years. All right. So you have to be absolutely sound in the body, mind, and spirit because you're all going to face those calamities. All right. Okay, proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So, my insight or the reflections what we had was with respect to looking at one of our companions, which is the master cook. So, he took at least from our estimation when we did this exercise a few sessions ago, at least 7 years is what it would have taken the master cook to become a swordsman of
The
a
cook,
level.
the cook to become a swordsman. The cook became a master cook. You have to be, Tintin, you have to be every time precise. Okay, like
Yes,
every time the heartbeat is precise. Every time the functions, the biological process of the body is precise. Every bird, every grass, every tree is precise. Of course, human beings are much more wonderful. Like Ramesh also pointed out, there's a whole lot of scope for randomness, no problem. But when you deliver, your attention should be firmly clear about choosing the right syntax. Okay?
yes, sir.
He was not a master cook. Nowhere in the parable the term, the concept master cook is mentioned. Only at the end. Okay?
Yes, sir.
This is just a reminder, that's all. Nothing wrong about what you said. Of course, he was a master cook. But only Shogun could see that. Like every one of you is a wonderful being that you have to discover. You have to become the Shogun. You have to become the master samurai. Sorry, you have to become the samurai. You have to work out and you have to be the Shogun to identify the masterliness of you, fortunately or unfortunately.